Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing today? Well, you know the drill. Get your coffee. Maybe some chocolate, because you just never know with me. Oh boy. And don't forget, tonight, it's Friday Night Live with Trish. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a heads up. You're going to need more than one cup of coffee. Maybe a bag of Reese's cups. Maybe you might need just, I don't know. Maybe a 1-pound bar of chocolate, because it's going to be that tense. So we'll get into this. There's a few things that I'd like to discuss today, okay? All right, here we go. The Federal Reserve. I got to talk about this because of tonight, all right? The Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, takes his seat to testify before the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee hearing on the semi-annual monetary policy report to Congress on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. So more and more informed observers are asking why, after 13 years of the Federal Reserve's increasingly aggressive monetary interventions, the benefits remain so skewed toward Wall Street over Main Street. The answer is simple. Follow the money. Trish has been saying this for how long, right? Using the traditional tools, the Fed pumps money into the financial system, hoping it will make its way into the broader economy. But the Fed can't control where the money goes or who financial institutions decide to lend it to. And clearly the primary beneficiaries have been investors and the ultra-rich. This has been discussed here on this channel how many times? Fortunately, the new technology in the form of central bank digital currency provides a mechanism for the Fed to distribute cash directly to working families. This would be a profound shift in the way the Fed has traditionally responded to the economic crisis, largely bypassing the financial system and channeling increases in money supply to the people who need it the most. For over a decade after the 2008-2009 financial crisis, the Fed kept money cheap and plentiful in a well-intentioned effort to revive the economy from the debacle. But the money wasn't getting to consumers. Sorry about that. Where was I? But the money wasn't getting to consumers, which is why the Fed could never sustain its 2% inflation goal. That started to change last year when the government stepped up fiscal spending for pandemic relief programs such as supplemental employment insurance, economic impact payments or EIP, rental assistance, and others. These programs were largely funded by deficit spending enabled by the Fed's purchases of massive amounts of government debt. And those trillions in new fiscal spending were absorbed into Main Street. Voila! Consumer prices started picking up, perhaps too much, because we're seeing it now, are we not? The fiscal spending was more effective in getting help to working families. But even these fiscal programs were fraught with unnecessary political wrangling, overly complex requirements, and payment delays, which stemmed from reliance on an inefficient and costly payments system to distribute the funds. CBDC would provide a better way. By utilizing distributed ledger technology. The Fed could quickly and cheaply get digital dollars to households in times of crisis. To be sure, such a system would need to be authorized by Congress and utilized only in severe economic conditions, triggered perhaps by a precipitous drop in employment or GDP. But with a system of auto stabilizers, families would not need to wait for the political system to wrangle over ad hoc relief programs, nor suffer costs and delays inherent in our outdated payment systems. The Fed could distribute funds directly to digital wallets held by households and or use regulated digital payment providers to help consumers set up digital wallets and custody their CBDC. You know what this sounds like? I'll wait. Hang on. This would also promote financial inclusion. Digital wallets could be more accessible to unbanked or underbanked populations who fear the complexity and fees too often tied to checking accounts. Congress could authorize the Fed to provide initial seed money to households as an incentive to set them up. While payments would be limited to households, indirect benefits would accrue to businesses as they would provide emergency income for struggling families to pay rent, buy food, and other essential goods and services. By using a Fed-sponsored distributed ledger, the Fed could know the identity of the recipient and track the money to make sure it reached its intended beneficiaries, providing strong controls against fraud. Importantly, the Fed would no longer be trying to boost the economy by lowering interest rates to incentivize more borrowing. When people lose their jobs and incomes, they don't need more debt, they need cash to tide them over. Providing cash assistance could help wean our economy off the use of debt to sustain growth and hopefully lead to an eventual normalization of interest rates, ending the economic distortions caused by so many of ultra-low interest rates. Banking industry advocates such as Bank Policy Institute argue that CBDC, fearing that it would disrupt banking by drawing money out of deposit accounts and into CBDC digital wallets, but this should not be a risk, particularly in the amount of CBDC per household was capped and was issued solely for government emergency support payments. Such a system could actually prove beneficial to banks as it would reduce the risk of consumer defaults during severe economic downturns. Moreover, CBDC could always be converted to traditional fiat currency and deposited into bank accounts if banks offered households with sufficiently attractive terms. And of course, businesses and other institutions would still need banks to hold their deposits and service their needs. These terms. It's like the shiny object thing. See this over here? If you do this, we'll give you this. No. I'm not falling for it. Another argument used both for and against CBDC is that it would undermine privately sponsored stablecoins, a form of cryptocurrency which value is tied to and backed by fiat currency. Some fear that privately sponsored stablecoins could eventually displace central bank money. Thus, they support CBDC as a way to crowd out these private initiatives for the same reason. Supporters of private stablecoins advocate against CBDC in the U.S. I support properly regulated private stablecoins. Disclosure: I am on the board of Paxos, Paxos, a regulated trust which has one, but I also think they can coexist with CBDC, particularly if CBDC issuance is limited to household emergency payments. Our payment system has always relied on a combination of private and Fed-sponsored facilities. This is also no reason to think CBDC would kill responsible innovation among private stablecoin issuers. Indeed, parallel private sector efforts to develop stablecoins could help inform and complement the Fed's use of this technology. A final argument against CBDC as a monetary tool is that it could increase the risk of inflation. To be sure, the impact on consumer spending would be much more direct than the Fed's current tools, but that is a strength, not a weakness. Given the greater efficiency of CBDC, smaller increases in money supply would be necessary to boost consumer demand, and should consumer price inflation escalate, CBDC would provide the Fed with an elegant solution: pay interest on CBDC to give households an incentive to save, not spend it. It's time for a fundamental rethink of how we use monetary policy to support our economy. Incentivizing borrowing with cheap money is inherently unstable. We can see the results: unprecedented levels of government and corporate borrowing, reckless speculation, and nosebleed valuations across the board spectrum of assets. We all hope and pray that accelerating consumer price inflation is transitory, but if the Fed is forced to raise rates to tame it, the impact on corporate and government borrowing costs could be disastrous, and as would the negative impact on asset prices to financial stability. Hi, Angel. It's hard to see how we get out of our current predicament, but it's easy to see how technology can, over the longer term, give us an alternative to low interest rates that can get our country out of this debt trap. If we are going to print money to support our economy, let's print it for the people. CBDC can provide the way. Now, this was sent to me by a subscriber, so I'll leave that link in the description box below. Whoa. So, the next thing that I want to talk about is something else that's all going to hit us, okay? It's affecting us now, right? And a lot of you have come to me and said, my gardens, they're not flourishing. Yeah, I'm having problems with mine. The only thing that's doing well are my herbs and my greens that are growing. Nothing else is producing at all. The National Oceanic and Atmosphere Administration reports put this out, okay? A major heat dome is expected to envelope much of the United States, scorching temperatures over the next week, okay? According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the upcoming heat wave will reportedly affect much of the lower 48 states, with some areas reaching up to 15 degrees higher than normal. So this is the time where you want to stay hydrated, okay? Do not leave your pets outside. Put a time limit on them for, potty time. My guys, when it's, during the day, 3 minutes. Yeah. The Great Plains can expect temperatures to exceed 95 degrees, while St. Louis specifically may surpass 110 degrees. The West won't experience a reprieve from its continuous barrage of heat waves. So it also expected to hit highs of the 90s to 100s across parts of Oregon and Washington. The extreme heat in the Pacific Northwest is renewing fears that numerous wildfires raging in the areas will continue to surge and spread amid the unrelenting drought conditions. So please be careful with any of this that's going on, okay? I know how horrible it is. I really do. Up until 2 days ago, we didn't see any rain, and it finally rained. It's awful. I mean, it was getting to the point where my grass was actually getting crunchy again. Like how your grass gets crunchy in the fall and it starts to turn brown and it's crunchy like cornflakes. Yeah, my grass was getting like that again. Now with this this next thing that I want to discuss. This, I had mentioned this about, I want to say 2 months ago, about a possible ketchup shortage. And I was told, you don't know what you're talking about. We're not even in harvest season for tomatoes. Guess what? Get ready to pay more for tomatoes as California growers reel from extreme weather. So guess who was proven to be correct once again? So tomato sauce is feeling the squeeze and ketchup can't catch up. I love you. So California growers, they grow more than 90% of America's canned tomatoes and a third of the world's canned tomatoes, okay? Ongoing drought in the state has hurt the planting and harvesting of many summer crops, but water-hungry processing tomatoes are caught up in a particular treacherous swirl, or a tornado, they're saying, of problems that experts say will spur prices to surge far more than they already have. Okay, so as people who prepare before this gets any worse, get your butts to the store, get some canned tomatoes, some sauce, canned sauce, and get some ketchup, all right? The drought threatens to imperil some of America's favorite ingredients like pizza sauce, marinara sauce, tomato paste, stewed tomatoes, and ketchup all hang in the balance. And this comes not long after a bizarre and completely unrelated shortage of pizza sauce and individual ketchup packets during the height of food delivery craze pandemic. This also comes atop of already steep increases in the price of fruits and vegetables, which have been rising since the coronavirus pandemic was declared last year. For tomatoes, higher prices could start taking hold soon, if not already, said Wells Fargo Chief Agricultural Economic guy Michael Swanson. If you're a producer or a canner and see these problems coming, why would you not raise prices now in anticipation? And he's right? So he added that consumers don't see the price tag for a lot of these processed tomatoes consumed away from home. It's embedded in the menu board, but it is one more reason prices at like Chipotle and Pizza Hut will go up. In a normal year, Aaron Barcelos, he's a farmer, okay, in Fireball, California. He grows 2,200 acres of processing tomatoes. What a job. I can't imagine. 2,200 acres. Wow. This year, he's decided to drop 900 to 900 acres on his farm. Whoa. That is a huge drop. Which is on the border of Merced and Fresno counties. He's left the remaining acres unplanted, choosing to focus all of his precious water on almonds, pistachios, and olives grown on trellises. Holy shite. Crops that command higher prices and represent already significant sunken costs. Whoa. We get 8 inches of rain in a normal year. That's it? Last year we got 4.5 inches. We got 0% of our water allocation, which forced us to buy a lot of expensive water, and it doesn't make sense to put it in tomatoes. Yeah, I can see that. He said many growers have made the decision to use their limited water on permanent crops. Yeah, I can see that. Permanent crops meaning the trees, like the olive trees and the nut trees and stuff like that. I see that. Yeah, because I would do the same thing. I would do the same thing because tomato plants, they're not permanent. They're really not. Tomato plant, you have to keep planting them over and over again. Once you plant a tree, you plant a tree. That's it. So that's why do you think I plant? Why do you think I have planted 23 fruit trees on my property? Because once they're there, they're there. Everything in my greenhouses, you plant them once, that's it. You gotta, and once you harvest, that's it. You know what I mean? I mean, they're not forever plants. You know what I mean? They're that's the only bitch really about, being a gardener. You really have to make that decision. You know what I mean? That's why I have decided to invest more in trees than I have in plants. Yes, I have plants. I have a lot of plants, but I invest more in trees than I do with plants. And my plants that I have, they're not deep rooters. Like I have a lot of like lettuces and stuff like that. Like a lot of my stuff, they're in raised beds. They're not deep rooters. So, well, yeah, I could see why he's doing that and why a lot of people are doing that. Trees and things like grapevines, like I have grapevines. So yeah, of course I would water those more than I would anything in my greenhouses. Yeah, absolutely. Choosing to forego planting annuals like tomatoes, onions, and garlic even letting crops already planted wither in the desert-like conditions. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. This year's shortage of processing tomatoes has been a long time in the making. Farmers already had been planting fewer tomatoes. From 2015 to 2019, fewer countries were importing American tomatoes, partly because the dollar was strong, which made the U.S. canned tomato products more expensive. This created an oversupply of California tomatoes, and processors cut back their orders and farmers grew fewer acres. At the same time, partly because of a trade war, a global shortage of steel sheets used to make cans for food production caused can prices to soar. Major processing plants in Williams, Lemoore, and Stockton, California closed, citing higher production expenses, leaving fewer places for growers to sell. Inventory at the beginning of 2020 was low, and supplies had tightened up worldwide, and the pandemic hit. Cue the tomato hoarding. Whoa. Frank Mueller, he's a multi-generational tomato grower and president of M3 Ranches in Woodland, California, in Yolo County, euphemistically described the market last year as disrupted. Early in the pandemic, gallon cans of tomatoes sat unwanted on restaurant distributor shelves, hurting those who sold to the restaurant industry and other food service sectors. This included caterers, event arenas, and corporate cafeterias, all shuttered in the spring of 2020. Meanwhile, retail sales at grocery stores from 5-ounce cans of paste to 20-ounce cans of diced went nuts. If you were just selling to food service, they didn't want all of those tomatoes last year when restaurants closed. But if you were in retail, You are in hog heaven, he said, going on to describe the huge uptick in pandemic pizza delivery, which used up all of the gallon cans, followed by a ketchup shortage when curbside pickups and food delivery services grabbed all those little packets. On top of the chaos of the supply problem, there's still the threat of the Rona. Thousands of farm workers throughout California have gotten sick on the job. Outbreaks still occur despite robust arm candy. Wow, well, you know what? This article is really long, so I'll leave the link in the description box below. But at least you guys know, all right, as people who prepare, get your tiny heinies out to the store, all right? Stock up as much as you can on ketchup, tomato paste, tomato sauce, stewed tomatoes, diced tomatoes, whatever you need, okay, for your prepper pantries, okay? I love you. I'll see you tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And you know, say hi, angel face. This is my baby. Stay positive, keep prepping, and as always, fearless. Right?